Hello. For the Rising Great Reads, I would like to discuss Beloved, arguably one of the jewels of 20th century fiction, written by Toni Morrison, the first ever African-American woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. The book itself, set in early 1870s, just after the US Civil War. It is based on a real-life story of an enslaved woman who had escaped, yet at the point of being recaptured, she decided to kill her own children, but only had time to kill one. In this book, the murdered baby is Beloved, whose ghost comes to live with Setha, her mother, and her sister Denver. As a novel, Beloved overflows with literary gifts. When I first read it, I chewed over almost every sentence, sometimes reading it again, sometimes reading it aloud. The narrative is beautiful, enriched with spatial metaphors, archetypal allegory, and haunting imageries, evocative of trauma and the wounds of slave trade and slavery. For me, three features stand out and that make this a masterpiece. First, it poses great moral questions. An obvious one already heard is this: is it right to end a child's life so that they would not suffer the pain of slavery? Complex question, of course, and one that holds throughout reading the book. Even in an interview, Morrison says it's difficult to answer. The question is difficult to answer. And she says it might be the right thing to do, but no one has the right to do it. There are other moral questions, such as the one concerning love. What does it mean to love? Is love a privilege for some? And how does one love at all? In this novel, for Setha, a used-to-be slave woman, to love anything that much was dangerous, especially if it was her children she had settled on to love. The best thing was to love just a little bit, everything just a little bit. So when they broke its back or shoved it in a crocus sack, maybe, just maybe, she'd have a little love left over for the next one. The second feature for me is that this book gives voice to the voiceless and names the unnamed or unnameable. Beloved is the name of the murdered, unnamed child. Tree is in reference to the scars on Setha's back from whipping. And jewelry is what Morrison used to describe the neck of Setha's lover, Paul D, from being chained. By speaking the unspeakable, describing the indescribable, Morrison unfolds the deep truth of slavery, the horror of dehumanization, but also the profound humanity of the enslaved. Here, Paul D describes Setha's tenderness about his neck jewelry. Its three wands, like attentive baby rattlers, curving 2 feet into the air. How she never mentioned or looked at it, so he did not have to feel the shame of being collared like a beast. Only this woman, Setha, could have left him his manhood like that. The third feature for me is that this book remembers the unremembered and reminds us of the need to face oppressed collective memory, such as slavery. For Setha and her daughters, without embracing these memories, the unremembered continues to haunt them, to hold them, so much so they live simultaneously in their present and in their past. Morrison says, "Beloved was not a story to pass on." So they forgot her, like an unpleasant dream during a troubling sleep. Occasionally, however, the rustle of a skirt hushes when they wake, and the knuckles brushing a cheek in sleep seem to belong to the sleeper. Sometimes the photograph of a close friend or relative looked at too long shifts, and something more familiar than the dear face itself moves there. They can touch it if they like, but don't, because they know things will never be the same if they do. Clearly, the unremembered is never forgotten, and they wear different guises, even today, in racism, in poverty, in violence, the three evils of structural oppression identified by Martin Luther King. That unremembered demands to be remembered is because memories can imprison but also liberate. By remembering, the formerly enslaved can reacquaint with their bodies once so violated by brutality and torture, and can return to their community from which they once ran away because its identity was associated with commodity and utility. Martin Luther King calls this new place of belonging the beloved community, built on dignity, compassion, and mutual respect. For Morrison, through this book, this beloved community must start with the listening, deeper listening to the unremembered. Yes, she writes, this is not a story to pass on. Nevertheless, she did, and had continued to do so, because she knew it only too well that it is in the remembered that lies the seed of forgiveness, of redemption, of healing.